Welcome back! My name is ballerscuba. This is Video Games Over Time! We are still in 1987. Today, we're going to talk about some more honorable mentions of 1987. On July 7th, 1987, Konami released Getsu Fuma Den to the Famicom. Featuring music by Hidenori Maezawa, Getsu Fuma Den is an action role-playing game. The player plays as Fuma, who must locate the 3 pulse blades and summon his brother's spirits in order to defeat the evil Ryu Kotsuki. The game was reviewed well by critics at the time. In 1987, Broderbund released The Ancient Art of War at Sea to computers. Developed by Everywhere, The Ancient Art of War at Sea is a strategy game. The player commands a fleet of ships in the late 18th century against one of 6 opponents, including 5 opponents from naval history. The game received relatively positive reviews from critics at the time and sold over 100,000 copies. On July 10th, 1987, Nintendo and Fuji Television released Yume Kōjō Doki Doki Panic to the Famicom Disk System. Designed by Shigeru Miyamoto, developed by Kensuke Tanabe, and programmed by SRD, Yume Kōjō Doki Doki Panic is a platform game. The player plays as the mascots from the 1987 Yume Kōjō Festival, designed to advertise Fuji TV's fall lineup of shows. The characters must defeat an evil toad named Mamu in order to save kidnapped twins and restore the Dream Machine. In 1987, Atari Games released APB to arcades. APB was designed by Mike Haley and programmed by David Thurer, Alan Murphy, and Russell Daw. It features art by Mike West and music by Brad Fuller, Hal Cannon, and Earl Vickers. The player plays as Officer Bob, who must reach a quota of citations and arrests. The game was notable for its cabinet, which featured a steering wheel, a gas pedal, 2 buttons, a detachable seat, and flashing lights on top of the cabinet. In 1987, Hybrid Arts released Midi Maze to the Atari ST. Designed by James Yee, Michael Park, and George Miller of Xanth Software FX, Midi Maze is a maze shooter. Up to 16 players can link up their computers to shoot each other's Pac-Man-like avatars in a maze. Although not popular at the time, the game is seen as innovative in retrospect. In 1987, Electronic Arts released Chuck Yeager's Advanced Flight Trainer to computers. Designed by Ned Lerner of Lerner Research, Chuck Yeager's Advanced Flight Trainer is a flight simulation game that featured Yeager as a technical consultant and in-game guide. The player chooses one of 12 real-life aircraft and 3 experimental aircraft designed for the game. The game sold over 250,000 copies and received fairly positive reviews from critics. On July 10th, 1987, Nihon Falcom released Dragon Slayer 4 Drasle family to MSX computers. Designed by Yoshio Kiya with music by Yuzo Koshiro and Mieko Ishikawa, Dragon Slayer 4, also known as Legacy of the Wizard, is an action role-playing game. The player plays as the Drasle family, an abbreviation for Dragon Slayer, who must get the Dragon Slayer sword in order to defeat the dragon Keela. In July 1987, Tecmo ported Mighty Bomb Jack to the Nintendo Entertainment System. The game was received well by American critics at the time. In 1987, Software Projects released Escape from Singe's Castle to computers. Designed as a sequel to Dragon's Lair, Escape from Singe's Castle is an adventure game. The player plays as Dirk the Daring, who must go through Singe's castle in order to get the treasure. The game received mixed reviews from critics at the time. In July 1987, Nintendo ported Kid Icarus to the NES in North America. This version features different graphics for the ending, staff credits, and a password system to save progress. Despite receiving mixed reviews at the time, the game would sell 1.76 million copies by 2003. In 1987, Thalamus released Hunter's Moon to the Commodore 64. Programmed by Martin Walker with music by Matt Gray, Hunter's Moon is a shooter. The player must collect star cells to move between the game's 128 levels. The game was reviewed well by critics at the time. In July 1987, Tecmo ported Solomon's Key to the NES. This version of the game has 64 levels, including the final level and 15 secret levels. It would also give the player a final score through a game deviation value, or GDV. Also in 1987, US Gold would port Solomon's Key to computers. Developed by Probe Software, these versions of the game would not be nearly as successful as the arcade or Famicom versions of the game. In 1987, Mindscape released Indiana Jones and Revenge of the Ancients to American computers. Developed by Angelsoft, Indiana Jones and Revenge of the Ancients is an interactive fiction game. The player plays as Indiana Jones, who must get the Mazatec power key from the Tepozteco Pyramid in Mexico before the Nazis get it. On July 19, 1987, Sega released Anmitsu Hime to the Master System. Based on the manga by the same name, Anmitsu Hime is an adventure game. When Sega adapted the game to Western audiences in 1989, it would become Alex Kidd High-Tech World. The game received mixed reviews from critics. On July 20th, 1987, Sunsoft ported Fantasy Zone to the Famicom. This version of the 1986 arcade game would not be as successful as the arcade version. In 1987, Accolade released Test Drive to computers. Developed by Distinctive Software, Test Drive is a racing game. The player chooses one of 5 cars to drive on a winding course, avoiding traffic and speed traps. The game is reported to have sold 400,000 copies and was reviewed fairly well by critics at the time. On July 24, 1987, Konami ported Double Dribble to the Famicom Disk System. This version would be renamed Exciting Basket for the Japanese audience. Konami would also port Double Dribble to the NES in September. These versions of the game would feature 5-on-5 gameplay on a horizontally scrolling screen and would be known for the hot spots, specific spots on the court paired with certain techniques that would nearly guarantee the ball to go in the basket. These versions were reviewed well by critics at the time. On July 28, 1987, the NetHack dev team began releasing NetHack to computers. NetHack is a roguelike that would continue to see development for decades. The player generates a character, then explores the procedurally generated dungeon to find the Amulet of Yendor from the lowest floor before escaping. The game is considered one of the biggest roguelike games of all time. Through continual updates through the years, NetHack would develop a dedicated fan base. In 1987, Tom Frasina left as CEO of Accolade. Frasina left to found his own company, 360 Pacific, to design war games. Alan Miller, one of the co-founders of the company, would lead Accolade after Frasina's departure. On July 30th, 1987, Infocom published Plundered Hearts to computers. Designed by Amy Briggs, Plundered Hearts is an interactive fiction game. The player plays as a young woman in the late 17th century. The player is kidnapped by pirates and must overcome the evil plans of the governor to live happily ever after with her pirate captor. The game was reviewed well by critics at the time. In 1987, Tradwest purchased Cinematronics. Cinematronics, the publisher of Dragon's Lair and Space Ace, had been in financial trouble due to the failure of Laserdisc games. After going through what has been reported as the longest bankruptcy in the state of California, Cinematronics' assets were purchased by Tradewest, who reformed the company as the Leland Corporation. On August 1st, 1987, Capcom released Black Tiger to arcades. Black Tiger was produced by Yoshiki Okamoto and programmed by Masayuki Akahori, with music by Tamayo Kawamoto. Black Tiger is a platform game. The player plays as a barbarian hero who must slay the dragons to save the kingdom. In 1987, Firebird Software and Simon & Schuster Interactive released Star Trek: The Rebel Universe to the Atari ST. In the game, the player must solve the question of a mysterious part of space known as the Quarantine Zone, free their fellow Federation starships, and stop the plot of the Klingons. The game received mixed reviews from critics at the time. On August 15, 1987, Nintendo ported Metroid to the NES, giving the game a password system for players to continue their progress. The game would be very popular in America, contributing to an overall sales total of 2.73 million units, making it one of the best-selling Famicom titles of the time. The critics in America were also very positive about the game, instantly seeing the game as one of the best games on the system. Nintendo had also released Metroid to arcades in North America as part of the PlayChoice 10 system. In 1987, Kesmai began releasing Air Warrior to computers. Air Warrior is a massive online flight simulation game that would see development until 2001. Players would use their computers to connect to a central server to play as a number of World War II aircraft, fighting against each other to shoot down planes and capture air bases. It is reported it would cost over $10 per hour to play, almost $30 per hour in 2026. In August 1987, Taito ported Arkanoid to the NES in North America. This version of the game would have 3 additional levels compared to the arcade version. It would also come with a custom controller. Also in 1987, Taito ported Arkanoid to computers. Published by Imagine, these versions of the 1986 arcade game would be well received by critics at the time. In August 1987, Taito ported Elevator Action to the NES in North America. Developed by Micronics, this version of the 1983 arcade game would not be particularly popular and received mixed reviews from critics at the time. In August 1987, the Master System began being released across Europe. Different companies would be in charge of distributing the console depending on the country. The Master System proved to be successful in Europe, gaining a larger market share there than it had in Japan or the United States. On August 22, 1987, Konami released Nemesis 2 to MSX computers. Designed by Naoki Matsui, with music from Kinuyo Yamashita, Moroaki Furukawa, and Masahiro Ikariko, Nemesis 2 is a shooter and sequel to Nemesis, the MSX version of Gradius. The player plays as a ship named the Metallion, who must defeat Dr. Venom and the Bacterions. On August 22, 1987, Nintendo ported The Legend of Zelda to the NES in North America. In an effort to keep a large fan base in North America, the game was released in a gold cartridge, and anyone who sent in their warranty card would join the Fun Club and be subscribed to a newsletter that would have puzzles, jokes, and secrets for the game. By early 1988, there were over 1 million members of the Fun Club. Nintendo advertised the game with a commercial, a rare thing for the company at the time. The commercial would be successful and gained a lot of attention itself. The North American cartridge itself featured its own chip that allowed for larger games to be played on the NES, as well as its own battery-powered RAM that would allow the player to save games to replicate the experience on the Famicom Disk System in Japan. The game would be immensely popular in the United States. By the end of 1987, the game sold over 1 million copies in the United States. It would go on to sell over 3 million copies by the end of 1990, part of the over 6.5 million copies of the game sold worldwide. Critics in America also loved the game, with some seeing the game as the main reason to purchase the NES. On September 3rd, 1987, Culture Brain released The Magic of Scheherazade to the Famicom. Produced by Academia Yumanosuke, with music by Akinori Sawa and Shunichi Mikame, The Magic of Scheherazade is an adventure and role-playing game. Based on the novel 1001 Nights, the player must save Scheherazade from the evil wizard Sabaron. The game received mixed reviews from critics at the time. On September 15, 1987, Infocom released Beyond Zork to computers. Designed by Brian Moriarty, Beyond Zork is an interactive fiction game and the next entry in the Zork series. The player's ultimate goal in the game is to get the legendary Coconut of Quendor. The game received mixed reviews by critics at the time. In September 1987, Broderbund ported Lode Runner to the NES in North America. The NES version of the 1983 computer game would not be as popular in America as it had been in Japan, where it was an early release for the Famicom. In September 1987, Sunsoft ported Spy Hunter to the NES in North America. This home version of the 1983 arcade game would not prove particularly popular. In September 1987, Activision ported Kung Fu Master to the Atari 2600. Developed by Gary Kitchen of Imagineering, the Atari 2600 version, while a technical feat considering the limitations of the console, would not be successful. In September 1987, Acclaim Entertainment ported Tiger-Heli to the NES in North America. Developed by Micronix, the NES port of Tiger-Heli was not particularly well received, partially due to the limitations of the console. On September 18, 1987, Walt Disney Television Animation premiered Ducktales on American television. Ducktales is an animated children's show that follows Scrooge McDuck and his three nephews Huey, Dewey, and Louie on their adventures, often surrounding villains trying to steal Scrooge's fortune or his number one dime. The series was very popular among both the audience and critics. On September 24, 1987, HAL Laboratory ported Stargate to the Famicom. This home version of the 1981 arcade game would not be particularly successful on the Famicom. On September 25, 1987, Konami ported Salamander to the Famicom. Konami would adapt the game, combining elements of the arcade version of Salamander and the Japanese version of the game, Life Force. On the whole, the graphics were largely taken from Salamander, but the power-up system from Life Force was used. On September 28, 1987, Paramount Television premiered Star Trek: The Next Generation on American television. Set a century after the events of the first show, The Next Generation follows the adventures of the USS Enterprise, now captained by Jean-Luc Picard and manned by an entirely new crew. While the initial reviews were mixed, The Next Generation would prove successful over time. That will do it for the honorable mentions of 1987 for now. My name is ballerscuba. This has been Video Games Over Time. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in our next video when we go into the mansion.